Well, welcome everyone. My name is Brandon Brigado. I'm the staff director for the Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands for the House Committee on Natural Resources. Despite all the weather, I was able to make it here from Washington, D.C. for this exciting announcement. And before I introduce Chairman Grijalva, we'd like to bring up Matthew Putsoy Sr., the Vice Chairman of the Havasupai Tribal Council, to start things off with a prayer.
Queen, Ahan, Matai, Kowabin, Matai, Amov, Pan Chul, Pan Hak, Pan Shok, Pan Wok, Hanke, Waktikapka, we do a qualka, up to college, Matya, which that light, Pam Hak, Pam Shok, Pam Kiewa, Pam Iwak, Pam Wiwa, Ha, from Kiako, Pam Hakpaka, Pam Kayo, Pa. Will just pa the like pa which call jetta pam hak pam musaka pam mua pam kakewa of hanku pa kyo away hanku of ma.
And now we'll hear from Chairman Grijalva, the chair of the House Committee on Natural Resources.
Well, thank you very much, and Mr. Vice Chairman, thank you very much for the prayer. February 26th, 100-year anniversary of the Grand Canyon. And as we reflect on past presidents, from Teddy Roosevelt to Obama, who designated and made efforts to protect the Grand Canyon so that generations upon generations can experience the majesty, the wonder, the history, the life, and the spirit of the Grand Canyon. Today, we embark on an effort to continue our reverence and generational protection for the Grand Canyon, which the Grand Canyon needs and deserves. This Tuesday, I and other colleagues will be introducing the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act, withdrawing permanently federal land from mining laws, essentially taking the moratorium that's in place now, that was put in place under the Obama administration, and making that mining ban permanent. In my time, as in all of your times, there's been a legacy of support and effort to protect the Grand Canyon, to protect the surrounding areas, to expand its presence, protect its watershed, protect its resources, cultural, historic, and the very life of the Grand Canyon. And whether it's the existing moratorium that's there now, that was a no small effort on the part of many, many people to make that happen. Whether it was our effort that we didn't quite cross the finish line with, in our effort to have the Grand Canyon designated as a monument under the Antiquities Act, and now this effort today. And the advocacy and the support of the people of Arizona, Americans across this nation, I think really requires us as a Congress to both to pass into law this legislation. The mainstays, the protectors of the Grand Canyon, are here today, and they will be speaking. And all of you that have joined us today, they have individually and collectively been really consistent and persistent voices for protection. And they will be making comments. My colleague, Mr. Hallahan, will be arriving shortly, and he has joined us early in this legislation, and we're very proud to have his support. We're also going to have Native nations represented, whose connection to this Grand Canyon of ours is since time immemorial. We have elected representatives who have consistently supported the Grand Canyon organizations and others. For me, on a personal level, it's been kind of an odyssey as we went through it. Ups and downs, some frustrations, but we feel very, very confident that we have an opportunity in this House of Representatives to set the template for what protection needs to be in the long term for this canyon of ours. The public wants us to do it. The economies of the region need it. And the Grand Canyon needs something permanent and sustainable for its future. It is hard not to add a personage to the Grand Canyon for some reason for me. It's a living reminder to all of us that what we share on this planet can be tenuous and can be jeopardized if we don't step in and assure that the gorgeous gorge that's behind us and around us isn't taken care of and remains there. The legislation is simple. The legislation takes what is in place and makes it permanent. And the legislation is gathering support, and we will continue to push for that support. I'm proud of the efforts. I'm proud of my association with many of you, and with tribal leadership in the tribes, with the organizations, and we are headstrong enough and stubborn enough that this one is really important. And we have to get it done, and we have to get it out of the House, and then we'll deal with the Senate once we do our part. And we're giving the Senate the benefit of the doubt at this point, that they will love what we do. And they will. Because if you take the collective public opinion, if that's any gauge, if you take the spiritual importance of this canyon to people that have known, lived, and shared with this canyon since time immemorial, and if you look at the future, and what a future without would mean to this nation of ours, and quite frankly, to this planet of ours. That's the Grand Canyon. You add personage to it, it becomes your brother, your sister, and your family. And I think we should, and all of us have been treating this as like a very important part of our family. I want my grandchildren to see it the way it is and even enhance it. And I want their grandchildren to still have that experience, and the grandchildren after that. That's the legacy we leave collectively. And I think we should be very proud of all the efforts to protect and defend the Grand Canyon that have occurred, and all the efforts that everybody has done, my colleagues behind me and all of you there, that we have fought for this canyon because it means something. It has substance, and it can continue to have that substance. With that, let me turn it back to Brandon, and by the way, he's done a really good job in putting this whole thing together, the legislation, et cetera. But let me turn it back over to him so he can introduce the rest of the speakers and give them an opportunity to express their point of view and to express their support for what we're doing. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have a kind of distinguished panel of speakers today that really indicates the level of support for this legislation, but and for the Grand Canyon. And we're going to start with several tribal elected leaders. First, I'd like to invite up Matthew Pitsoy Sr., and Carletta Talusi from the Havasupai Tribal Council.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Grijalva and his staff for the outstanding work in seeking further permanent protection of our homeland, and the delegation that is here today to support the efforts, the tribal leaders and other organizations that are standing up to do what is right, and that is to protect the Grand Canyon, the homeland of the Havasupai people. Furthermore, Havasupai has been here in the Grand Canyon from time immemorial, and from the beginning of the time, and so our ancestors have hunted and gathered here for over a millennium, and we have a sacred duty to protect the land and the Grand Canyon from further desecration. Uranium mining is a threat to our homelands, a threat to our spring waters and our land and our future children. We need to fight to protect the way of life for the Havasupai people and other tribes that have ties with the Grand Canyon. And from time and time again, the mining industries have failed to adequately clean up the abandoned mines, and they leave a legacy of contaminated ground, and that ultimately falls onto our people. We need to temporarily and protection to become permanent. We already know enough to understand that uranium mining is not good for our land and our people, not good for our water and our future generation to come. While this bill is a good step, I think we will not rest until our homeland and our people are protected forever. Thank you.
My name is Carletta Talusi. I'm a Havasupai Tribal Council member, elected on behalf of the tribe. I've been working on behalf of this uranium issue since I was a teenager. And back then, the only voice against uranium mining was the Havasupai. And now you all are here joining us. So many voices together will stop uranium minings in this region. To me, on behalf of the tribe, we have worked very hard and diligently with all allies here in Arizona and also leaders. And we've traveled many times to DC to have our voices heard. And our voice is no more uranium mining in the Grand Canyon. Without your support, without your voice, and without congressional leaders like Raul Grijalva standing next to us and saying no more, we sure hope that we will bring this home to protect this canyon from any further destruction of our burial sites, of our watersheds, of our cultural sites. Those all need to be protected, and that's why we're here today. We have members of our tribal council that flew out of Supai Canyon today to be here because they feel it's very important to voice our concerns continuously. We are just here in a moment of history. We are just following our ancestors' footsteps to protect this area. So please stand with us. Share your voice with us. As we continue with the support of this legislation before us, we have a lot to do ahead, and we really need you to stand with us. So today is a very important day and a historical day that we continue to work together to stop uranium mining in the Grand Canyon forever. Forever. So with that all said, I'd like to thank all the tribal leaders and distinguished guests that have made it here to show your support. And let's continue to work together and move this legislation forward in DC. And we're going to need you there as well. And let's protect our sacred places, Red Butte. There's a sacred place, not to all of us places sacred, but we also have a very sacred place called Red Butte. And right next to Red Butte is Canyon Mine. And that mine is still active. And that mine is moving forward. And not only to protect this million-acre withdrawal, stop the mines, but think about that one too. Let's stop Canyon Mine too. Let's stop that from moving forward as well. So I just want to say thank you everyone for being here. Representative Raul Grijalva has been a warrior and supporter of all the tribes here in Arizona. For him to be here today and support us all the time, I think he needs a round of applause. Yeah. And also to all the people that have supported us that are still present here and ones that have gone on. We have been led by tribal elders that are no longer with us. They're the ones that led this fight. They're the ones that kept telling us, younger generation, keep speaking out. Keep telling the story of what's happening at the Grand Canyon, of all the international mining companies that are coming onto federal land and staking uranium claims. Please tell that story. And we've done that since the 1980s, and now as a result of moving forward with legislation. And that's what we have to keep doing. And without the support of the Grand Canyon National Park, we wouldn't be able to be doing what we've done thus far. So we want to continue moving forward with everybody's support, and looking forward to working with you all, and let's do this all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those heartfelt remarks. Next, we'll hear from the Honorable Richard Powski, a councilman with the Hualapai Tribal Council.
Gamu. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here on behalf of the Hualapai tribe. As you know, we're west of here in our land. Our reservation was established in 1883 along the Grand Canyon. We have 108 miles of the canyon on our reservation on north boundary, and the water. And one of the things about this whole bill here with the uranium mining, as well as all mining that's going on in our Hualapai territory, is the water and the contamination that these mines cause as they drill and extract these minerals, and yet they don't clean it up. Maybe some of you know, or maybe some of you don't know, in the 70s, the Hualapai tribe was approached for a uranium mine to be put on the reservation, and the tribe voted against it and said they didn't want it. So it was a victory for many of our people and the young people that didn't want to have that. But you know, the government and industry wanted that to be a part of our economy, because we were an impoverished tribe at that time. But the people said no, they didn't want it. And because of the help of the young people and the people that we had support the tribe, voted it down, and we don't have any of that going on there, any mining at all. So we're glad to report that, and we're proud of that. You know, we're over here on the west side, on this side over here. There's a lot of things that have happened with Hualapai, you know, in our land base. You know, we work hard to maintain it and to take care of it. And one of the things, like I just mentioned, is the water. Not only here at the Grand Canyon, but also in the water that goes to Havasupai, the waters that go down to the, you know, Verde River, and the aquifers, all the aquifers that we have in this territory and in this region, you know, cannot be threatened or, you know, contaminated by mining operations that go on here. You know, I had an opportunity to work on the North Rim for 16 years and watched as that uranium mine came into existence. The small town of Fredonia boomed for that period of time that they were all there, all these miners, all these big trucks, all these transport of all this material to wherever they're taking it on the four corners. But those are types of things that were being run through our communities and run down our highways without us really thinking about what was in those trucks as they went by. That mine did close, all the people left, the town was abandoned, and it's just a small little community like it was when I first got there in the late 70s. But seeing that happen, seeing what mining does, it lasts for a while, but then it's not going to last long. The people, the illnesses and the health issues that it brings, the contamination of our aquifers that we once thought were pure and clean, we have to think about that stuff. And I feel that this effort by Grijalva to cease the mining here on the canyon is important. It's something that, it's not only important here in this Grand Canyon region, but also in the state of Arizona. The waters that run into the Colorado River in our territory around Wickiup, around there in the Santa Maria River, those areas where mining is taking place today. It's real important that we understand what's going on in the state with mining. What are the consequences of taking these minerals? And are they for our benefit or for another corporation's profits at the expense of our people? So I'm really glad to be here to talk to you about this, to support this protection of the Grand Canyon against uranium mining and all other mining that might be trying to occur here. One of the other things that they're trying to propose down in the Big Sandy region in our area is lithium mining. So that's coming up. Those are other mining ventures that are coming in from other countries, buying up the land in order to do this exploration and other sources that are occurring. As you know, Kingman, Baghdad are big copper mine areas. And the chemicals and the materials they use to extract that mineral is toxic, very toxic. And the tailings that they leave behind that feed into the tributaries that go into the Colorado River are our concern. They will be covering up our historic cultural resource areas out there, and we realize that, and we don't like that. So, when it comes to a cultural, traditional, spiritual viewpoint of these areas that are being affected and the environment, it's very important that we understand where our tribe, our sister tribes, and other people, other Indian tribes in our community value the landscape, value the environment, from the saguaro cactuses up to the pine trees, to this Grand Canyon, to the Colorado River, and all the streams that run into the Colorado River. Those are important. Those feed the animals, they're sacred, those waters, and we appreciate them and respect those areas as we continue to be part of the surveys and the different activities that go on in the canyon through the Glen Canyon Dam programs and things that we've done there. Wallapai has been an active player in doing the monitoring and surveys and impacts in the inner Grand Canyon from river running as well as the dam's fluctuations and the effects that are occurring. The river is going low, the sandbars around Lake Mead are rising, and as we allow mining and other operations to come in, it's going to just be detrimental to our existence and to the people in our communities and our water sources that we drink and rely on. Wallapai has been strong in trying to promote tourism and trying to bring in that market and income to the Wallapai tribe, and it's important to us. Mining is not. So we're real thankful that Grijalva has introduced this bill again, and we hope and pray that this will become effective for the benefit of all the visitors here at the canyon and for us, our people here and our homeland. So I want to just thank you all for being here in support of this bill and this effort to protect this environment and our landscape. So thank you, and we hope to see you as we push this forward and become successful in protection of this land. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that important and impactful perspective. Now we'd like to invite up, and I didn't practice this name, so excuse me if I butcher it, but the Honorable Clark Tenecongva, the Vice Chairman of the Hopi Tribal Council.
Lolma, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clark W. Tenecongva, Rabbit Tobacco Clan, from the village of Hopevilla of the 12 villages of Hopi today. I am the Vice Chairman-elect of the Hopi tribe. I am here today to express the Hopi tribe's enthusiastic support to Congressman Grijalva, Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act of 2019. The Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act of 2019 will permanently withdraw approximately 1 million acres surrounding the Grand Canyon from mineral entry and help ensure that Ungtupka, which is the proper name of what we call it in Hopi, which then translates into Salt Canyon, is protected and preserved for future generations of Hopisinum, which is us, the Hopi people, and other Americans that reside here on this land. And all people and living things that also reside within this surrounding area and on this earth. Hopi people, as maybe some of you all know, call this the place of our birth. We emerged from here into what we call now the fourth world. It is, like I said, known to us as Ungtupka. And we, as the people, have always had connections to these lands and especially to the canyon. The testimony of our ancestors, occupation, and the use for thousands and thousands of years, which we cannot, at this point, anybody can really say how many thousands of years, but it's what we say, time immemorial. Manifested in the prehistoric ruins, as you can see throughout the canyon, the rock art, the artifacts that were taken illegally from the canyon and surrounding areas, and the human remains of our ancestors, the Hisatsino, people of a long time ago who continue to inhabit the land. We are not people that should be utilized just like animals for study. Our people were laid here for a purpose. We made the trek through here. How many people do you think would be happy if you went and dug your grandfather, your grandmother up for museum study? That is what happened. The Grand Canyon is a traditional cultural property of the Hopi tribe. These public lands are part of our ancestral lands, and the Hopisinum have returned to Ungtupka on salt gathering trips, pilgrimages, since time immemorial, and continue to do so today. Annually, the Hopi tribe does a river trip in the spring and in the fall. When we do our pilgrimages, we know the place names throughout the canyon and where the salt was once collected. That's where we collect it at today. And that was for ceremonies, for the Manhood Society. For over thousands of years, the springs and the waters of the Hopi Mesas have provided life to the Hopisinum, and the legacy of past uranium mining has left wounds on our land, our water, and our people. These wounds are not scars, for they have not healed. Two of our villages presently, both Upper and Lower Munkapi, are now threatened by uranium contamination plume of groundwater from the former rare metals mine near Tuba City. Hopi Sino and many other Native American people suffer an ongoing legacy of death by cancer, chronic health problems, and radioactive contamination, including water contamination on tribal lands. We know firsthand from our experience at Munkapi that the contamination will travel, that it does not stay in one place, and that it spreads contamination as it moves. I, for one, have lost 4 family members, as you may have recalled, the radiation fallout from the nuclear testing up in Nevada. My mother-in-law, and 2 of my brothers. So I know the effects of radiation and what cancer can do to families. The Hopi tribe has repeatedly stated we oppose the continued use of the archaic 1872 mining law to justify uranium mining. The 1872 mining law is a 19th century tool of archaic law used to, quote, discover, claim, and take Native American lands, and continues today as a policy of disregard and disrespect toward the beliefs and sacred ties of the Hopi and Native American people have with this earth. The legacy of uranium mining has devastated the people and the land and continues to destroy the land and the lives of Hopi Sino, Native Americans, and Americans alike, like you in the audience. The Hopi tribe has repeatedly stated that we believe that federal, state, local governments should address the existing threat to human life from past contamination from uranium mining, and that Congress should replace the 1872 mining law with a Sacred Sites Act and mining law fit for life in now what is called 21st century and into the future. On March 28, 2008, the chairman of the Hopi tribe, on behalf of the Hopi people, provided congressional testimony supporting Congressman Grijalva's Grand Canyon Watershed Protection Act of 2008. In 2011, the Hopi tribe support the 20-year Northern Arizona mineral withdrawal. The Hopi tribe now has a pending tribal council resolution supporting Congressman Grijalva's introduction of a permanent mineral withdrawal, the Grand Canyon Centennial Act of 2019, which we will address in our, what we call the second quarter of our meetings next month. Guyanis Katsi, told in Hopi history and prophecy, is somewhat translated into this way. It is life out of balance, or a state of life that calls for another way of living. The state of this characterizes the risk we face together in modern times. If Americans are to live together in America in the 21st century, we must call together for another way of living. The laws of the past that are now being used against all American people must be consigned to the past and replaced with laws that support life and not destruction and death. And what we mean life out of balance is, look at the current administration. Which way is it headed? Do they Do they respect the laws that are here, were here, founded for America? I don't believe so. Is it such a great need to build a wall? I don't think so. The part of this is, at one time or another, we were connected with those people from down south. There are still tribes that go back and forth between Mexico and America. They are also affected by mining that's being recommended at this time. The Hopi tribe, along with the Pasquayaqui tribe, filed a lawsuit against the Forest Service back in October of last year. Therefore, today, I proclaim that the Hopi tribe supports other governmental and non-governmental institutions and organizations that join us in opposing continuing legislative efforts to undermine the Northern Arizona mineral withdrawal. I hereby also proclaim the Hopi tribe continues to offer our complete support for the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act of 2019 to permanently withdraw approximately 1 million acres surround the Grand Canyon from mineral entry under the General Mining Law of 1872. Finally, may I remind you out there in America in this room today, February is one of the highlights, the highest months in Hopi ceremonial cycle. This is what we call, where our ancestral spirits, what we call the Katsinas, the Katsina, they return back from the San Francisco peaks and from Cliff Springs east of the Hopi villages. They come and bless us in the way what you see out there today. Moisture, abundance of crops, a long lifeline, continuation of a clean life living, rather than having to hesitate what kind of water you are going to be consuming. All these, what I have said here, has already been prophesied by the Hopi. What was going to happen? It's happening here today. So when and who will take responsibility for the wrongs of our actions and declare, say, let's work together. Let's live in harmony. We want clean water. We want peace throughout the land. I ask all of you for your prayers. Today, I stand before you, not just as the vice chairman of the Hopi tribe, but as a religious practitioner. But I went both ways. I'm walking the white man's shoes today, so I'm here supporting something what the Hopi tribe believes is very important to them. I left my ceremonies this morning, driving out here 6 hours. I will be awake another 24 hours, which I have done for the last 2 days already, in support of what we're trying to pass here today. In final conclusion, the Hopi tribe supports Congressman Grijalva, the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act of 2019. We thank him as our congressman from the state of Arizona that sees and views how sacred this place is here to the Hopi and many of the tribes that came before any of you are here today. Let's make it clear. We were here, we're still here, and we're going to still be here tomorrow. What America tried to do to us, they failed. And we will stand strong, united as one tribe throughout the whole state of Arizona. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for those touching remarks and for also reminding us about the need to modernize, update, and reform the outdated Mining Act of 1872. That's another piece of the chairman's legislative agenda that we will be working on this Congress. We were scheduled to hear today from President Jonathan Nez of the Navajo Nation, but unfortunately, because of the snow and the conditions in the reservation, he wasn't able to make the trip. So now I will turn it over to the Honorable Tom O'Halloran, who represents Arizona's 1st Congressional District.
Good afternoon. Driving in here today a little earlier, my wife and I were coming through the gate and we saw, Pat said, look up on the tree. It was an eagle, a bald eagle. Did you see it also? Wasn't it beautiful? What a sign. A sign that we are heading in the right direction, a sign of strength, a sign of wellness. Important to the tribal nations in this area. It is my honor to be here today. I represent Arizona's 1st Congressional District and the Grand Canyon. Thank you, Chairman Grijalva, for your persistence, as it was indicated earlier by the Vice Chair of the Hopi tribe, year after year of making sure we continue to make this a solid message. I'm a co-sponsor of this legislation and will support it strongly. Thank you to the tribal leaders, elected officials, and community leaders for being here today. 100 years young, this beautiful place. 100 years young. Isn't it great? As we know, as we hit the trails around here, that I love to do, it's been around a lot longer than that. We have to make sure that we don't harm it any more than we already have. These tribal ancestral lands are important, as you've heard from the tribes. They're important for us all. But these sovereign nations, these tribal sovereign nations, need to understand that their voice needs to be heard at a louder level in Washington, a louder level throughout the United States. Why, you ask? Not only because of making sure these tribal lands, ancestral tribal lands, are kept, and the current tribal lands are brought back up. Do you realize that we're within walking distance of a Superfund site because of uranium? Yet not too far from here, a few miles from here, is another site that is currently being produced, uranium, and didn't follow regulations when they had a problem there, and took it upon themselves not to notify government, and took it upon themselves to spray water across the entire area up there, and then they finally got caught. This is not the way to do business in America. And we definitely don't want to do business. Since I've been in Congress for the last 2 years, I've been able to go around these tribal nations. There's 12 in my district. I should say our district. I should say your district. Hualapai, they're on the Colorado River. Have a soup pie, runs right through their area. The Navajo, over 500 mines that have not been addressed. 7 decades. And they want more mining to be done throughout this area and not protect the watershed, not protect and have laws in place that would protect the people of America, the people of the world that come here, the tribal nations that live here, the other communities that live here. This is not what America is about. Our health, the welfare of our children, the welfare of our families has to come first. It cannot be a secondary piece of thought. We have to identify clearly that the strength of America is its people
its heritage, and the foundation on which it began. These millions of visitors that come here to this heritage site every year from around the world expect more of us. The wildlife that's here and across these lands and across the 1,000,000+ acres that the chairman is trying to protect need our help. We need to preserve these surrounding lands from a mining legacy that has devastated them and killed many people. It wasn't too long ago, I was at a home on the Navajo Reservation within a quarter mile of a site, Site 28. Talked to a mother, a Navajo elder that had lost 8 of her children, her husband, and her sister because she lived within that quarter mile. The wash comes right down next to the house. It didn't do that just because the wash came back next to the house. On my way to that event, I ran into a mother at a gas station. President Nez, Vice President Nez at the time said to me, "I'd like to introduce you to this woman." She had lost both of her twins. This mining legacy, if you can't clean up what you've done before, don't ever try to do what you want to do in the future. And you better make it so that it's done correctly. And right now, I wouldn't trust one uranium miner in the world to do what's right. As I mentioned, this watershed here is important to every one of us, to everybody that's concerned about the Colorado River, to everybody that receives water in Phoenix and Tucson and to southern Arizona and California. Contamination of our groundwater can contaminate that river. Runoff from our lands can contaminate that river. We can't afford that to occur. So when my wife Pat and I first moved here, we lived down in the Sedona region. And we were so blessed to have found it in the first place. And then we found the Grand Canyon. I had thought as a young child about the Grand Canyon. You saw it on TV all the time, black and white at times, but you saw it. So one of the first things we did when we came out west was to visit the Grand Canyon. And as we built our home, we came up here every opportunity to see the Grand Canyon. And if I'm in northern Arizona, I come and see the Grand Canyon. And when we bring guests over here from Parliament, we have them come and see the Grand Canyon. One of the prime ministers said to me, he said, "Why don't they just build a bridge across it?" I said, "When we get there, you'll find out." We were explaining to him the large amount of land that you had to go around to get to the North Rim. That's the land that the chairman wants to protect. That's the land that the tribes want to protect. That's the land that you want to protect, and the American people really want to protect it too. And so that's our stewardship goal for the future, to make sure that we do the hard work that's necessary to protect this land. For the federal government and others to realize that they need to meet their obligations for this land, for the people that live on this land, for the people that have been impacted for 7 generations because of mining on this land, for the natural resources that are important to the American people and the tribal nations, and to recognize their sovereignty, to recognize their voice. And we need to do that today. We should have done more in the past, and we have to work even harder into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Halloran. Now we'll hear from representatives of the Coconino County Board of Supervisors, Vice Chair Lena Fowler, and Supervisor Liz Archuleta.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure and honor to be here today. My name is Liz Archuleta. I represent District 2 on the Board of Supervisors, and I'll be joined here shortly by Vice Chairwoman Lena Fowler. First of all, I want to just extend greetings on behalf of Art Babbitt, who's the chair of the Coconino County Board of Supervisors and represents the Grand Canyon along with Supervisor Fowler. And he wanted me to communicate just his strong support for the bill that Chairman Grijalva is introducing. So please know that he would be here if he could, but unfortunately he had another commitment that was long-standing. Let me just first start out by thanking Chairman Grijalva for the bill, but most of all for this long and steadfast and strong support for the Grand Canyon. He's been a steward of our public lands for years, and he has stood strong in support of the Grand Canyon and being a steward of the Grand Canyon, which to me is the crown jewel of our nation's parks. And so I really want to thank my good friend. We have a long history. Since I joined the board in 1997, we have been fighting for the preservation of the Grand Canyon. And in 2008, very proud that Coconino County, the Board of Supervisors, supported the permanent ban on uranium mining near the Grand Canyon and its watershed. So for over a decade, we have been fighting for this and so proud to be part of this historic day. You know, the past mistakes of the uranium mining industry we have seen the everlasting effects that it's had within Coconino County. You've heard from other speakers, and we can tell you that we've witnessed serious health and environmental effects associated with uranium mining. Uranium development operations in Coconino County have caused considerable contamination and environmental degradation, particularly on the Navajo Nation and with the Hopi tribe. We've also witnessed the contamination of creeks and aquifers that provide public drinking water. In the Grand Canyon National Park, the Orphan Mine operated within the park until 1969. The contamination of Horn Creek in the Grand Canyon National Park and the presence of radioactive materials are attributed to this mine. In addition, in Tuba City, decommissioned uranium mining sites were capped with clay and rock, causing groundwater contamination. The decommissioned mine and sites continue to put residents of Tuba City, as well as surrounding areas, at risk of contaminated drinking water. This is still happening today. People are still at risk because of the contamination of their drinking water. But the Grand Canyon is also an economic driver for Coconino County. With millions of visitors to the Grand Canyon National Park comes significant tourism revenue for communities and counties in northern Arizona. It's estimated that the total annual economic impact of all of the Grand Canyon National Park visitors to the north and the south rim is approximately $687 million. So why would we not protect the Grand Canyon? Why would we not continue to support the ban on uranium mining? The potential negative impact to tourism in northern Arizona from uranium mining near the Grand Canyon Park cannot be overstated. We support this bill, and we thank Chairman Grijalva for taking this step, this very important historic step, to protect this international treasure. And we thank Congressman O'Halloran for signing on to the bill and for his strong and steadfast support of this bill. And on behalf of myself, and on behalf of Supervisor Fowler, Vice Chairman Fowler, and Chairman Babbitt, we want to tell you that we are so proud to be here today to ensure that the beauty of the Grand Canyon National Park, the meaning and significance of the Grand Canyon will be preserved for generations to come, so that my child and his children, all of your children and grandchildren and future generations can know just the majestic and the majesty of the Grand Canyon National Park and the meaning to all of us in Arizona and throughout the nation and the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I am Lena Fowler, Coconino County Supervisor. I'm the Vice Chair, and I'm of the Bitterwater clan. I've come from Tuba City. And I just want to share a story with you that, we in Tuba City, there were a number of ladies, we come together. And we had one that was on the school board. And she comes one day and she says, there's something going on at the school. We're having to increase our special needs funds, and we don't know what's wrong with our children. And as we took a while to learn what was going on, and it pointed to the uranium. So one day we're having breakfast again, and we're peeling potatoes, and we decided to start the Tuba City Concerned Citizens. The Concerned Citizens was to really draw attention to the uranium tailings in Tuba City, Cameron, and particularly the Rare Metals site. From that, the more we learned, you don't know when it's affecting you. We were swimming in these pools of uranium pools. We were drinking the water. Much like right here, we were just told there's mines here. We're concerned about watershed. Why are we concerned about them? Today, from what we have gone through when we were young, drinking the water, swimming in the pools, and this preschool building built right on top of uranium tailings, homes made out of uranium tailings, and our animals contaminated from from eating the grass nearby. All of that had a health effects on all the citizens. At that time in 1980, we had to ask all the families that lived near Rare Metals to sell all their sheep, all their animals, horses and cows. And 1 mile had to be shaved north. And we had to take down all the homes. People had to move. We didn't know what uranium was. We had to find a yellow cake. We didn't even have a name for it. We had to find a yellow cake to show and to educate the people about what uranium is. We don't know where it is when it's underground. You don't know because you can't smell it. It is something that you don't notice until you have felt effects. Today, these effects are real for us. And why are we concerned out here? We're concerned for all citizens. We're so concerned about our county citizens, the visitors that come here. Today in Tuba City, because of all the health effects and environmental effects that has caused, January 11th, the Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation opened up the first Native American cancer center in Tuba City. It's costly. We have 5 federal agencies that are working together on Navajo Nation, over 5 sites that are still being cleaned up. And that's what you're going to be looking at out here in Grand Canyon. So I'm very thankful that this bill is being introduced. I have firsthand knowledge on what it does to children, families, and it's really heartbreaking to have just watch people or see people that have those health effects. And if you've never experienced it, never seen it, I hope you don't have to. It's something that you live with. So that's something we're living with in Tuba City and across Navajo Nation. And this bill right here, off Navajo, off tribal lands, well, it is our homelands. I saw a sign right here, it says, Native Americans call home, this Grand Canyon call home. And first thing that came to my mind was that Native Americans know this is their home, Grand Canyon. We don't call it home, it is our home. So I just want to, I was very thankful when I when I was elected into office as a county supervisor, that Coconino County supports banning of uranium mine, and that there are very concerned Board of Supervisors that I am working with. So I'm just really thankful. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we want to thank Congressman O'Halloran and Congressman Grijalva, actually, to introduce this bill, and we support it wholeheartedly. And I know the citizens of Navajo Nation and the Navajo Nation government completely supports it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now we'd like to invite up the Mayor of Flagstaff, the Honorable Coral Evans.
Hello, everyone. Congressman Grijalva, thank you for allowing me a few moments to speak at this historic event. And thank you, Congressman O'Halloran, for co-sponsoring this bill. I'd like to just mention that we have Councilmember Regina Salas with us here today as well in the audience. And thank you, all of you, for being here. Protecting the natural integrity of the Grand Canyon region is culturally and ecologically important to a diversity of groups and individuals, as is evident by all of us here today. Several Native American tribes, the Flagstaff City Council, Coconino County, outdoor enthusiasts, local businesses, wildlife groups, and conservationists, and many more agree that this place is too precious to risk and too precious to mine. The Grand Canyon matters to the city of Flagstaff. For Flagstonians, the Grand Canyon in this region is special to our quality of life and those that we care about. The city of Flagstaff has and is committed to the advancement of social and environmental justice for indigenous communities. We support those communities, including the Havasupai Nation, in their opposition to uranium mining and the threats posed to them and their way of life that such mining operations cause. Indeed, the resiliency of the Havasupai tribe and the rest of the tribes in this region is incredible. The Havasupai tribe has protested uranium mining that occurs on their homelands, such as Canyon Mine, which threatens the contamination of their groundwater. This is the only sole source of water for the Havasupai tribe, and indeed the Grand Canyon. As Flagstonians, we also spend a lot of our free time here. And over the years, starting in 2010, the Flagstaff City Council has passed resolutions opposing uranium mining, the transportation of uranium ore through our city, and any such related activities which further radioactive pollution in this region, given the threats that radioactive contamination has and still poses to public health. My mother's name was Coral Jean Dorsey. She was a downwinder. She died from breast cancer as a result of the testing that happened in Nevada. Part of her legacy is that her daughter, which is me, has had breast cancer twice now, once at the age of 29 and once at the age of 43. Uranium mining is an issue. We can talk about the economic benefits that the Grand Canyon brings to this region. Indeed, we talked about the millions of dollars that we gain from tourism and the thousands of jobs, almost 10,000 jobs, that happen here in the Gateway community. I want to be clear that uranium mining offers little in the way of economic benefit. It creates short-lived jobs and operations that risk damaging our ecosystems and the waterways that this region depends on. Uranium companies pay zero in royalties to local governments. Yes, they pay business taxes, but under the 1872 mining law, they are not obligated to pay royalties like some of the other leases. And indeed, the uranium companies have not been required to clean up mining areas or compensate those that have been harmed by their action. The risk associated with uranium mining in the Grand Canyon region is simply too high. As the mayor of the city of Flagstaff, I want to be clear that I support a permanent uranium mining ban for the Grand Canyon region because it is in the best interest of our citizens, our friends, and our economy. I'd like to say thank you, Congressman Grijalva, for proposing this bill, and thank you, Congressman O'Halloran, for co-signing it. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and thank you all of you for being here today.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from Ethan Almack, the Executive Director of the Grand Canyon Trust.
Thank you, Brandon. First, I'd like to thank Congressman Grijalva for your steadfast, honorable, and visionary leadership on this issue and so many others over the years. I'd also like to thank Congressman O'Halloran for your support and leadership and co-sponsoring of this bill. It's truly an honor to gather together with leaders from Havasupai, Hualapai, Hopi, Navajo, and other Native nations, with members of Congress, county and city officials, conservation groups, businesses, hunters and anglers, and people from across our state and beyond who care so deeply about this place. Thanks to all of you who have gathered here on this momentous occasion. Today, the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection, through the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act, we have the opportunity to change the course of Grand Canyon's next 100 years. This act has been many generations in the making. Miners began chipping away at Grand Canyon's rock layers even before the 1872 mining law became the incredibly damaging law of the land as it still is today. 10 years later, in 1882, the government consigned the Havasupai to a 518-acre square surrounded by mining claims. 5 generations after that, the Havasupai and those of us that have followed are still surrounded by mining and a tragic legacy of contamination that simply must come to an end. Today, we have an opportunity to close the door on uranium mining on 1 million acres of critically important public lands bordering Grand Canyon National Park. This action will build on and make more complete President Benjamin Harrison's withdrawal of 1.8 million acres in and around the Grand Canyon in 1893. It will also build on the Navajo Nation's 2005 decision to ban uranium mining across the entirety of the Navajo Nation, nearly 18 million acres. The Grand Canyon Trust is here today in large part because Havasupai leaders first stood up to the Canyon uranium mine located just miles south of where we're gathered here. For decades, they've defended their homeland from desecration and fought to secure Grand Canyon's life-giving waters from a uranium mine that was first permitted to operate on Forest Service lands in 1986. Today, contaminated water must be pumped continuously from Canyon Mine while it has not produced 1 ounce of ore in more than 30 years. Canyon Mine, along with Arizona 1 mine north of the canyon, are inactive because uranium remains too costly to mine. As our newly released report concludes, uranium mining in the Grand Canyon region is unnecessary for national security, it is uneconomic, and is a threat to our tourism-based economies. The Grand Canyon Trust is humbled and honored to join Havasupai, Navajo, Hopi, and Hualapai leaders and others in supporting a permanent halt to this assault on the land and its people. In this Grand Canyon National Park Centennial year, we join together with all of you to ensure that uranium mining will not threaten these lands into the next century. As a matter of principle and common concern, we proudly join with citizens of many political persuasions and personal histories to stand with one united voice in supporting the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act. Let's work together to keep the canyon grand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. I know we're running a little over, so bear with us. We only have a few more speakers. Next, we'll hear from Serrano Riggs. She's representing several conservation organizations. I'll let her go ahead and talk about that.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Yate, my name is Serrano Riggs. I am from the Diné Nation. I work with Hall No. We're a Navajo-based group from all over the place on Navajo Nation. I work with Cleve Benally, Leona Morgan, and myself and others in this room. I am representing on behalf of Sierra Club, Center for Biological Diversity, Grand Canyon Wildlands Council, Wilderness Society, National Parks Conservation Association, Earth Justice, and Western Mining Action Project. I would like to thank Congressman Grijalva and O'Halloran for being here, and other elected leaders and tribal representatives here. We are, and everybody here in this room, I'm happy you're here. We're all here to talk about a very important issue, which is uranium mining. And looking around us today, here at Grand Canyon, we see this vast beauty around us. We see the canyon, we see the snow, we see everything that is special about Grand Canyon. And to us as tribal and indigenous people, we see more than that. We see, as what Lena Feller had said, this is what we call home. And as we're here at the canyon, we feel this strong presence, and many of you feel this strong presence. You guys feel this sense of wonderment, and you have a strong connection to the canyon. And there is really something special about it, and we're drawn to it all the time. We're drawn to come back here, and that's how we feel as indigenous people. When we're here at the canyon, we have all our senses are heightened. We can hear everything around the canyon. We hear the birds, we hear the wind through the trees, we hear, nature around us, and we see things a little bit more. We see the minute details of the canyon, the glitter of the snow outside, and as we're standing out there, there's this sense of peace, this calmness, this serenity, and there's a really strong connection there that we all feel. And if you're here at the right time and it's so quiet and there's no overflights or anything, you can hear the water from way down below, and it's a magical feeling just to, like I said, your senses are more awakened and they're aware. But within all of that, there's something that we don't see. There's something that we don't smell, that we taste, and that is uranium mining. Uranium mining is all around us. We see this toxic legacy from Orphan Mine, Kenya Mine, and the mines on the North Rim, and the hundreds of abandoned mines on the Navajo Nation that was just mentioned. We know how uranium affects the land. I know myself how uranium impacts and affects everything around us. I've heard it from my own family member, my own grandpa, who was a miner and passed on from lung cancer. I hear it from my aunts and everybody in my family who is going through chemo treatment, and I've heard it from community members and my friends that are around me. So here today, I'm standing here, like I mentioned, on behalf of all these groups and behalf of the tribal members that are here behind me and around us, and those who aren't here, to show that we're all here to support one another, and we're all here to to advocate more and to educate on the effects of uranium mining and how dangerous it is. And with the groups that are here, the ones that I mentioned, in the past they have been successful in getting this a temporary ban on uranium mining here in the region. And what we would like to see now in the future is to make it more permanent. So with Congressman Grijalva and O'Halloran here, we see them as this champion here, and we see that we would all like to create a new legacy, one that is rooted in cultural respect, preservation, awareness, and education. So I stand here now and I say we all are ready here to support the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act and make the next 100 years a better place.
Thank you, Serrano. We hear you. Our next speaker is Mr. Brad Powell. He's the Regional Director for Trout Unlimited and the President of the Arizona Wildlife Federation.
Thanks, Brandon, and I want to add my thanks first to Chairman Grijalva and Congressman O'Halloran. Their leadership is essential in resolving this key issue. Arizona is blessed with many treasures, but none shine brighter than the legendary wildlife populations found in northern Arizona. In 1906, President Teddy Roosevelt created the Grand Canyon National Game Preserve to protect what he believed, and many still believe, is the finest deer herd in America. From the world-famous deer herds of the Arizona Strip to the nationally renowned fishery at Lee's Ferry, northern Arizona is a mecca for sportsmen and women. To ensure that these sporting traditions can be passed on to the next generation, sportsmen have invested millions of dollars to restore key wildlife habitats, improve availability of water, and create quality fisheries. Uranium mining that contaminates waterways, destroys key habitats, and fragments wildlife populations will jeopardize all of these investments. Outdoor recreation in Arizona provides 18,000 jobs and contributes over $160 million in state and local taxes. Statewide, more than 2 million residents and non-residents enjoy hunting, fishing, and wildlife viewing. It contributes over $2 billion to the state's economy. As you know, contrary to what it looks outside today, water is scarce in Arizona and is essential for wildlife and downstream communities. The flow of underground water to the seeps and springs in this area is not well understood. The only thing we know for sure is that eventually this water runs downhill, with potential contamination for wildlife and downstream communities being the risk. The collecting ponds used in uranium mining fill with contaminated mine water. It tempts wildlife with poisonous radioactive water that is 80 times the safe drinking water standards. Simply put, this is the wrong place to mine for uranium. When you weigh the benefits, the few jobs, against the risk, human safety, clean water, healthy wildlife, and long-term cleanup cost, mining around the Grand Canyon simply makes no sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And our final speaker before I turn it back over to Chairman Grijalva to wrap things up is Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss. He's the chairman of the Wyss Foundation and a great advocate for public lands in places like the Grand Canyon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I am honored to be among such distinguished members of Congress, leaders of tribal nations, and community leaders. My name is Hans-Jörg Wyss. I'm a Swiss citizen and live in Wilson, Wyoming, and I've been over 30 years a member of the board of the Grand Canyon Trust. I love the beauty and the wildness of the American West. And my foundation has helped over the last 25 years to protect landscapes which should be protected, from wilderness areas to national monuments to national parks. And we fought battles where oil should not be drilled and mining shouldn't happen. I have spent close to 100 nights in the Grand Canyon, sometimes pelted by rain and snow, and on cloudless nights wandered about the stars in the Milky Way. I've hiked many of the side canyons, and we always remember the spectacular beauty of entering the canyon through the Nankoweap Trail from the North Rim, and the descent and climbing down to Royal Arch from the South Rim. I have admired and supported a remarkable idea, an American idea that is a shining example for the world. It is an idea that was written into the law that we're celebrating today. The Grand Canyon National Park Act of 1919 says that these lands shall be, and I quote, set apart as a public park for the benefit and enjoyment of the people, unquote. I repeat, for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. For more than a century, the Grand Canyon has shown the world that nature's wonders should not be sold to the highest bidder, squeezed of all their minerals, and locked behind a private gate. No, they should be protected for all, by all, and for all time. As the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of freedom and opportunity, the Grand Canyon is inspiring communities around the globe, in South America, Africa, Europe, and beyond, to protect our planet's last wild places in the public trust before they're gone. The Grand Canyon is a cathedral to conservation. Generations after generations of American leaders have added to the glory. First, a forest reserve, then a monument, and now a park. Now it is time to complete the protection of these sacred grounds and holy waters with this new bill. The Grand Canyon must be made safe once and for all from the pressures and perils of mining. And nature's most wondrous lands are best kept in public hands. Thank you very much.
Without further ado, Mr. Grijalva.
So Brandon asked me, said, what do you want to do, Raul? I said, oh, by the way, you're going to MC, and you did a good job. Thank you very much. I want to thank people. I want to thank the tribal leadership that was here, including President Nez that couldn't make it and supports the legislation. They're the spine of this whole effort and the nexus of what we're trying to do here. So it's indeed vital and necessary and hugely important that their support is with us, and we're very, very proud and humbled by their support and their help. My colleague in Congress, Mr. Heller, thank him for his advice, his counsel as we move through putting this legislation, him immediately becoming an original co-sponsor, and for his strong voice that we were going to need as we go forward. The 1872 law was named. That's a priority issue with us, to try to deal with a law that has, in the course of time, has become not a factor in any development in the West, but it become, in fact, an impediment to trying to do something constructive around conservation and preservation, particularly in the West. And we need to look at it. It is many things to be changed, but the fact that primarily foreign and international mining companies extract what they want from public lands and don't pay a penny of royalties back to the taxpayers, and primarily export them out of the country. And I think when taxpayers find that out, that it's not going to be something that they're going to welcome. This legislation will go in front of a colleague. She's the chair of the Public Lands Committee, of which Brandon is the staff director. Deb Holland, new member from New Mexico. One of the first two Native Americans, women to join our, to be in Congress, historic first, but more importantly, Deb's a great advocate and a good supporter of the legislation. Beyond that, she's from the Southwest, she's from the West, and I think has a deeper understanding about the connections that we've been talking about today, and she'll be a wonderful leader in this, and we're looking forward to her leadership as well. Grand Canyon Trust, their support, their insight, their expertise has been essential. Let me just end by that, you know, if you pardon the pun, this is not going to be a walk in the park. We'll have opposition. We'll have opposition from the mining industry, their lobbyists. That'll be intense. And it'll be intense because they will help those members that help them in terms of who they support and give money to. And, you know, the Flat Earth Caucus in Congress will certainly come to life. You know, the Flat Earth Caucus, they call themselves other names, the Western Caucus or something. But the Flat Earth Caucus, they're pretty, you know, their sense of history begins and ends today. It's a one-day wonder for them. And they believe that the cycle of life is actually secondary to, is there a profit to be made? And I'm sure we're going to hear lies. This legislation is going to threaten national security, making our country more vulnerable. We'll hear those lies, and we're prepared to answer and push back. We'll hear the lies that we're going to rob this country of ours and the taxpayers of energy that they need, that planes will fall from the sky, that cars on the freeway will have to stop and then turn into dust and blow away, that civilization as we know it will stop, the economy will collapse, and we're prepared to deal with those lies as we go forward. And I think this legislation is, we're prepared and committed to this legislation. But, you know, not because it's a good piece of legislation and it's a step forward to a conservation ethic that needs to be established deeply in the law of this nation, but frankly, because it's a cause to many of us and to you and to the people that have spoken today. It's a cause. The cause is the protection of the Grand Canyon because it's just, it's overdue, and it's life affirming. That's why we're doing this, because of that cause. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here tonight.